Are you going to be a scrub running Starfield at 30 FPS on your console? Hi everyone, it's me, Colesy, and today I am going to be recommending you some PCs for Starfield. Obviously, that was a bit of a joke at the beginning. If you want to play Starfield on a console, yes, it's going to be locked at 30 FPS, and yes, it's been kind of like a heated debate. That's fine. That's fine. However, this video is me going to be recommending PCs that meet the minimum and recommended spec for Starfield. So if you want to get a higher than 30 FPS experience, I have some recommendations for the cheapest PCs on Amazon for you that meet those specs so that you can be able to play Starfield on PC at a lovely higher than 30 FPS frame rate when it comes out in September. I have recommendations for both the UK and the US, so it doesn't matter where you are in the world, I have a PC recommendation for you. Starfield, if you've been living under a rock, is the new upcoming Bethesda open world RPG set in space. It is their first new universe in 25 years, and it's a game that a lot of people are very, very, very excited about, including myself. I'm looking forward to playing it. I played them Fallouts, I played those Elder Scrolls stuff. I've played games, you know. So yeah, today I have looked at the system requirements, which I have here, and I've looked at the minimum and the recommended and then sorted through and looked on Amazon, because Amazon is easily accessible for everybody, and come up with a list of PCs that I would recommend for the cheapest price possible that meet the requirements. So the minimum requirements, it wants a Windows 10. That doesn't really matter. Windows 10, honestly, that's fine. Windows 10, Windows 11, doesn't matter. You should be on one of those anyway. I guess they're fairly modern. Processor-wise, it says an AMD Ryzen 5 2600X or an Intel Core i7-6800K. Again, not the most recent CPUs, which is good. Means more people will be able to play the game. Memory, 16 gig of RAM. Graphics, an AMD Radeon RX 5700 or an NVIDIA GeForce 1070 Ti. And then you want to have 125 gig of available space. It's a big old game, and you want that to be on an SSD. Additional note says SSD is required. All of these specs, by the way, are taken from the Steam page of Starfield. The recommended spec is, again, Windows 10, Windows 11. Processor, an AMD Ryzen 5 3600X or an Intel i5 10600K. Memory, still 16 gig of RAM. Graphics, an AMD Radeon RX 6800 XT or an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2080. And again, the storage and stuff is all the same. You want to have an SSD. So those are the specs that we're working with. When they list minimum specs and recommended specs, they always list like slightly older hardware, because that is older hardware that people will still be using. It doesn't make it bad by any means, but they list the oldest hardware that will support it. I have had to check like equivalents of like more recent GPUs, because more recent GPUs are more available in PCs that companies are selling. I did a little looking up and made sure that the GPUs, the more modern GPUs that I'm recommending, are better or at least as good as the GPU that they are mentioning during the minimum and the recommended spec list. The equivalent of the 1070 Ti that we're going to be looking at in a lot of these PCs is the 2060 Super. So that is the next generation up equivalent / slightly better than the 1070 Ti, and then the 2060 Super is roughly equivalent / the 3060 is slightly better than it. So that's the 30 series GPU that we'll be looking at. All of the PCs that I recommend are spec'd by me. I haven't had a chance to play with them, but the spec list that I'm looking at, the reviews that I've seen of the company, of the PC itself, all look good, and so I'm happy to recommend them to you. There have been some companies that I have found through looking through these, and the reviews aren't very good, and so I have not included them because I don't want you guys to have a bad experience if I can possibly help it. So I'm not going to recommend you a PC that other people are having issues with, or a company that people are having issues with. We're going to start off with the UK, and we're going to start off with the minimum spec PCs. So let's jump into it, shall we? So the first PC we have here is an ADMI gaming PC, Ryzen 5500, RTX 3060, 16 gig of RAM, 500 gig SSD, 600 watt power supply, bronze rated case, and all that good stuff. So this is £649.90, so £650. And for what it is, I think that's a very reasonable price. You're getting a 3060, you're getting a Ryzen 5500. Again, both of these things are higher than the minimum spec. They're not quite at the recommended spec, but they meet the minimum spec and exceed it slightly. And I think all round looks like a good performing PC for your money. I think £650, honestly, it amazes me sometimes how like cheap a decent PC can be. Like £650 is not a lot of money for what I think is a really good quality gaming PC. It's a 6-core CPU, you know, it's got a 3060 8GB graphics card. It's not the most recent graphics card. Obviously, we've got the 40 series coming out now, but still, it's the same generation of graphics card that I'm using, and there's no part of me that's like, oh, I need to upgrade. These are still very, very capable, and this would be a very, very capable PC for just £650. I think it's a decent looking deal, a decent looking PC, well-reviewed store, well-reviewed PC in general. Basically, these PCs will be plug and play, ready to go, so you should be able to just plug them into a monitor and get sorted, set up your desktop and all that stuff, and then you can get to installing games like Starfield and playing them. So next up, we have a CyberPower Wyvern gaming PC, Ryzen 5 4500, NVIDIA RTX 3060, 16GB of RAM, 500GB NVMe SSD, 650W power supply, Windows 11, Wi-Fi, okie dokie. So similar spec to the other one. It is slightly more expensive, although it is on a discount at the minute. So it is £699.60, so £700. Again, I wanted to include more than one option. Yes, you can just go and buy the cheaper option if that's what you're interested in. I know CyberPower are a well-known brand, so if you prefer to go with CyberPower, it's £50 extra, a little bit more powerful power supply, a little bit older CPU. It's slightly different, but again, still more than meets the minimum requirement that Starfield is asking for. So again, I think it's a good option. I think it's a good option. Again, with all these things, like 500GB of SSD space is not a lot of space. It does meet the requirement, but of course you can add more storage down the line with more SSDs, hard drive, whatever you want to add. And honestly, they're not really very expensive to buy and add these days, and they are one of the simplest components you can add yourself to a PC. Like, it's very, very hard to get that wrong. So those are my options for the UK for the minimum spec PCs. Now we're going to move on to the recommended spec PCs, and obviously we're going to increase the price a little bit here, but actually it's not too much of an increase. I don't think. So again here, I did a little comparison of the 2080 to see what that would be equivalent to with the 30 series, which again is more commonly sold in PCs now on Amazon than the older 2080s or 20 series graphics card in general. And generally, if you're going to find like a 2080 powered PC on Amazon, they're more expensive than like the equivalent would be of the 30 series, just because I guess that they're less common and there's less going around. So ideally, we want to go with a newer one, but we still want the same, if not better, performance. So the equivalent with the 30 series or slash slightly better is the 3060 Ti. So that is what we have aimed at looking at here on Amazon for these PCs. We're looking at PCs with a 3060 Ti. Starting off here with the ADME gaming PC. Again, this is pretty much very similar to the ADME gaming PC we looked at for the minimum. It has the same CPU with the 5500, the Ryzen 5500, RTX 3060 Ti, Corsair, 16GB of RAM, terabyte NVMe SSD. So yeah, similar in the spec, roughly to the minimum spec version. I don't know whether to call it a version, but obviously we have the upgraded GPU with the 3060 Ti, and we have a terabyte NVMe SSD, which is specified an NVMe SSD, so it will be a bit faster than if the other one is just a standard SSD. And for £749, we're not actually looking at that much of an increase in price compared to what we were looking at. We're looking at what, £100 extra, and you're going up from the minimum to the recommended. Like, you're definitely going to be set nicely in that recommended area for Starfield. If this is within your budget, then I think this is a good option. If you're toying with the idea of, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to afford the recommended over the minimum, the price really isn't that much difference. It might be worth you saving up a little bit extra. Starfield doesn't come out quite yet, and maybe getting the more powerful PC that is set for a recommended spec. Next up, so again, we've got a CyberPower. This is the Warrior gaming PC. Again, we've got the same CPU as the last one, the 5500, same GPU, 3060 Ti, 16GB of RAM, terabyte NVMe SSD. So very similar in spec to the one we just looked at from ADME. But CyberPower, I wanted to include another option here. It is, again, a little bit more expensive. Very similar to what we did with the minimum spec, really. CyberPower is a brand that a lot of people know. They have very high rating and high reviews. Just wanted to throw this in as another option. Again, it is a little bit more expensive, similar to the minimum spec. The CyberPower was like another £50 extra, and it's basically the same here. But it's another option that you have, and again, the prices are kind of in a similar region, and I think these two are both good options if you want to meet the recommended spec. That concludes the UK recommendations. If you are from the UK, those are the recommendations I have for you for both the minimum and the recommended spec for Starfield. If you are working to a specific budget and you want me to look at something more specifically for you, say you're looking at more of a £1,500 budget and you'd like me to recommend a PC for you, whether that be for Starfield or not, or other games or content creation, streaming. If you guys do want a little bit more advice personally from me, then feel free to contact me on Twitter, drop a comment, and I do always do my best to get back to you guys and to help you find a PC tailored to your specific budget. But these are the cheapest PCs that I can find on Amazon that meet the minimum and the recommended spec. So if you're looking for just the cheapest possible PC that can run Starfield, these are your options. Now we move on to the options for the US. So if you are located in the US, these are the PCs that I have recommendations for minimum and recommended spec for you. So we're going to start off here with a renewed PC, purely because like this might not be available because it is a renewed PC. It's not technically brand new, but it comes directly from Amazon's renewed store. It's a HP. It's all brand that is reliable and well known. I figured it was worth mentioning, even if it does sell out quickly, because Amazon for the US seem to have a lot more of these renewed PCs, and I think that they're a good deal if you can grab one. RTX 3060, 12th gen, 12400, 16GB of RAM, 512GB SSD. Easily meets the minimum spec. It has a much newer CPU and it has a much newer GPU, but meets the minimum spec still. Like I said, it is renewed, so the price being $720, yeah, that's a heavy discount on if this thing were new, and obviously if it's been renewed, then I'm sure it comes with some sort of warranty and stuff, and it has been checked over and made sure that it works perfectly fine. So this is option number one. It's just a little bit of an out there option because it is a renewed PC rather than being new, but we do move on now to a new PC. We have the Yayan? Don't know how to pronounce that. Yayan maybe. Katana X24 gaming desktop PC, 12th gen, Alder Lake i5 12400F, 6-core CPU, RTX 3060, terabyte NVMe SSD, 16GB of RAM, Windows 11, all that good stuff. Yeah, this is the first brand new PC option. It is currently on an 18% discount, so it's $889. The ratings in general for this seem pretty good. I think I've recommended this brand before, and they seem pretty decent. And all the specs, again, meet the minimum spec or slightly above it, because it's a lot of the components like the CPU and the GPU are newer. You've got a terabyte NVMe SSD, so plenty of space. It is obviously an SSD as well, so that meets the requirements. So yeah, $889 for this first option here. Next up, we have the Skytech Blaze 3.0 gaming PC. Again, it's pretty much the same spec, the same i5 12400F, RTX 3060, 16GB of RAM. This one has 500GB of SSD, so slightly less space than the previous one. But again, Skytech is a brand that I have recommended a lot, and the reviews seem very, very good on this. So $899. So $900 pretty much, and again, this is on a discount, so you might want to grab it while it's on the discount if you can. But yeah, again, another option that I think it's a very nice looking PC as well, but it's again an option that I'm happy to recommend to you guys. Meets the minimum and exceeds it slightly with being slightly newer, so you're going to have a little bit of extra performance compared to somebody who is literally running the exact minimum spec with the slightly older hardware that the minimum spec requires. Now we're jumping to the recommended spec PCs. So first up, we have a Victus 15L gaming desktop computer, 12th generation Intel Core, RTX 3060 Ti, 16GB of RAM, terabyte SSD from HP. So again, a brand that you know well. We're stepping up the graphics card mainly is the most important thing that we're stepping up here to the 3060 Ti. In terms of CPU, we've always been kind of hovering around the same generation of CPU anyway, which exceeds both the minimum and the recommended spec. So the CPUs don't really change as much as the GPUs do here. The GPU is the most important thing if you're running a game. That would be the most important thing to upgrade in terms of gaming performance. And like I said, the CPUs just seem to be better than the minimum and required for most of these PCs. So yeah, $1,168.99. It's a bit of a specific price, but it is currently on sale, and apparently you save $281. So that's a nice little discount there for option number one for the recommended PCs. Went for this one purely because it's a Cooler Master. Again, the brand is quite well known, so I figured it's worth mentioning. Again, we've got the i5-12400F, 3060 Ti graphics card, 16 gig of RAM, and a terabyte M.2 NVMe. This is $1,099.99, so $1,100. It's currently on a discount. Again, a Cooler Master, you're not going to go wrong with a Cooler Master. It's a very, very well-known brand. And again, we're sticking pretty much to a very similar spec than we've been looking at for a lot of the other PCs in the recommended region. So I think this is a good option. And I think buying from a brand like Cooler Master, you know that you're going to get a pretty solid PC out of it. Next up, we have a Skytech again. We've got a Skytech Shiva gaming PC. So this has a Ryzen 5 5600X, 3060 Ti, terabyte NVMe SSD, 16 gig of DDR4 RAM. It's a cool looking PC as well. I think that looks really sick. We're sticking roughly around the same spec. We've gone with the Ryzen CPU rather than Intel CPU, but again, it more than meets the recommended spec. And we're sticking with the 3060 Ti because that's the best GPU for your money that meets the recommended spec requirements. So this one is $1,099.99. So again, $1,100, same as the last PC. It's up to you whether you want to go for style, whether you want to go for brand, whether you want to go for Ryzen or Intel. I have just sort of gathered what I can find as what I would say would be the best PCs for the cheapest price that meet the spec that we're looking at here for Starfield. Again, we're looking at the same price on the next one here. There's a lot of PCs I recommended here for basically exactly the same price. So this one is a Ryzen 7 5700X, so a step up from the Ryzen 5 that we were looking at with the last PC. Again, we've still got the RTX 3060 Ti, which is the graphics card that we want to look at. This one has 32 gig of RAM, so you have twice as much RAM, and that's really the reason I decided to include this one, because this one does seem like a significant increase in performance compared to what we have been looking at, but it's still the exact same price. So this is what intrigues me about this one and why I wanted to recommend it to you, because this one has a little bit more headroom in terms of it's got an 8-core Ryzen 7 rather than the Ryzen 5. It's got twice as much RAM while still having the GPU that we need, and it's got a terabyte SSD. So this one would be, if you're looking at spending $1,100 on a gaming PC that meets the recommended spec of Starfield, again, slightly exceeds it, I would go with this empowered PC because it is the exact same price as the past two, but has more in terms of its performance and more in terms of its spec. It says in the spec lists that it is recommended 16 gig of RAM, but having 32 gig of RAM is just better. If you can have more RAM for the same amount of money, then go with the more RAM. So yeah, I'd recommend this one. If you're looking to spend $1,100, this is the PC you want to buy. And get it before it goes. That's my entire recommendation of PCs. Again, they change from time to time. They sell out. They go out of stock. They go on sale. If you're watching this video, go and check the links in the description. All of the links to these PCs will be in the description. Go and check it out. Go and grab one while you can before they sell out. Go and check it out. And like I said, if you do want a more specific recommendation for you, for your budget, whatever your budget is, whether it's higher, whether it's lower, I will always do my best to help you guys out and try and find the best PC and the best option for you for your budget. So if you're coming to me and you're saying, look, I've only got $500, I am happy to try my hardest to see what I would recommend for you for that budget. And then I'm thinking future proofing. I'm thinking, what is the best option for you long term? Yes, you can go buy something secondhand, but is it better to buy something that maybe doesn't have a GPU in it and buy a GPU down the line? If you're maybe looking to just play Fortnite for a bit, you might be able to do that on the internal GPU and add a GPU down the line, and you're going to have a much better experience long term with that PC than if you go buy something secondhand. That is why I do these videos. I want to make sure that you guys have the best recommendations possible. It's very easy to go on eBay or Amazon and places like this and find somebody that's selling something saying, amazing gaming PC, awesome, but it's made of very, very old hardware that you don't know how long they've been using it for. It's out of date. It's going to need entirely replacing if you want to upgrade. And these, I just don't like the idea that people fall for these, so I like to make these recommendation videos. And specifically when a new game comes out that I know people are going to be enjoying or looking to play and run at a nice frame rate that is maybe above 30 that you can get on console, then I like to do these recommendation videos. So please do go check out the PCs. The links, like I said, will be in the description. Let me know what you guys think. Yeah, I hope this video has been helpful to you guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. So please remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you did enjoy it. Let me know if there's anything you would like me to recommend PCs for, any games specifically in future, and I'll definitely look into doing that. But thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time. Bye!